And now, it's time for a segment called, What Did You Do During Quarantine? Well, you see, I did have to write an essay about the Great Gatsby, but grades are a social construct, so I spent a week building it in Minecraft instead. So, because I'm fortunate enough to be a victim of the American school system, I've already milked Gatsby so hard that I'm really struggling to come up with any fresh new takes. To combat this, and to get all the boring analysis out of the way, I made a list of symbols which I annotated with some extremely helpful and definitely English teacher approved comparisons to help you understand them better. Now that that's done with, on to the plot. So, our narrator's Nick Carraway, and he spends the first 20 paragraphs telling us about how non-judgmental, trustworthy, and humble he is. It also becomes quickly apparent that he is not the protagonist. I mean, I guess the title kind of gives it away, but Jay Gatsby is a man who suffers from a severe case of main character syndrome, which means that no one in this novel can have a normal conversation without bringing up how mysterious and/or rich he is. Quick side note, you see the mansion that's behind me? Wouldn't it be nice and cool if you could see a time-lapse of me building it while epic music plays? Well, you see, I'm recording from a dinosaur laptop from 2009, and if I try to speed up video, it looks like this. And trust me, if I could get away with breaking the 8th Amendment, I would, but for now, no epic montages. So, Nick's at the Buchanan's house for a dinner party, and we're introduced to Tom Buchanan, who I feel is the kind of guy that would stare at me in the grocery store to make sure I wasn't stealing anything. You know, if I saw Tom Buchanan walking down the sidewalk towards me at 6 p.m. in the evening, I would simply pretend my house was coming up on the other side of the road and cross it. He has some pretty problematic opinions that he feels he's entitled to because he read deep book with long word in them, and honestly, he's a rich white guy in the 1900s, so it's not like anyone can do anything about it. Sitting next to him at the dinner table is one Daisy Buchanan. Daisy is Nick's cousin, and no matter what anyone else says, she loves her husband, and his rich monies, and his big house, and also his money. So what if he's a cheating, racist asshole? She's a golden girl, beautiful Daisy, pampered and adored, and too smart for her own good. She's also wildly unsympathetic and uses her innocent facade to ignore the consequences of her actions, but, you know, she's really pretty. And finally, the most important part of the book is introduced, Jay Gatsby's pining. After Nick goes home, he sits in his yard for a while until he sees his neighbor, Jay Gatsby, staring melodramatically off into the distance. You know, the green light at the end of Daisy's pier is probably one of the most well-known symbols in American literature, and, I really think I captured its inconspicuousness and subtlety with this giant pillar of green light that goes up to build limit. Okay, so far I've built the Buchanan's mansion, Gatsby's mansion, Nick's house, and part of the Valley of Ashes. The problem is, in chapter 2, Myrtle is introduced, and so is Myrtle's house, and I don't know what that looks like, so I'm just gonna look at the movie and copy it block for block. So this was a mistake. I guess I'm not building Myrtle's gas station anymore. Back to the plot. Nick meets Tom's mistress, is an unwilling bystander to couples drama, and I'm pretty sure he sleeps with Mr. McKee. And finally, in chapter 3, Gatsby's officially introduced. Nick's attending one of his parties and meets Gatsby and immediately spends a whole page talking about a smile. Then there's a lot of talk about car accidents and bad driving, which, foreshadowing. And as the summer progresses, Nick goes on a whole lot of excursions with Gatsby, who tries a little too hard to reassure Nick that he's a legitimate businessman with no shady past. And of course, they eventually run into Tom Buchanan, who just has to bring up Daisy, and oh boy does the story begin to unravel. Jordan Baker tells Nick about Gatsby's history with Daisy and reveals that he had moved to West Egg, bought a mansion, and was now throwing ostentatious parties just to impress her. You know, Gatsby's spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on things like champagne towers and orchestras to win back Daisy has the exact same energy as me staging vacation Instagram stories in the hopes that one specific person will see and immediately date me on account of how cool and awesome my life is. So now that Gatsby knows that Nick knows Daisy, he plans a tea party and wants him to invite Daisy so they can finally talk like functioning adults instead of the one-sided pining situation he currently has going on. But surprise, surprise, when Daisy arrives, Gatsby chokes like a 5-year-old on a Kinder Egg and maybe says a total of 2 complete sentences. Other than that, the reunion goes swimmingly and ends with Daisy sobbing into Gatsby's collection of silk shirts, which, of course, aren't just silk shirts because nothing in this world can ever be simple. In this case, the silk shirts probably represent both Daisy's and Gatsby's belief in the other's materialistic values. A commentary on the mass consumerism that permeates 1920s society, if you will. God, I sound like an English major. Also, the passage of time is an important theme of this chapter, but if you wanted to hear an in-depth analysis, you would be watching Crash Course instead of Minecraft videos. Sometime around this tea party, rumors about Gatsby's money really begin to spread. Some say he's a bootlegger, some say he's a criminal, and they're both probably closer to the truth than they think. But what they are wrong about is his past. Jay Gatsby is who James Gatz wishes he was, quite literally. He's a character who Gatz created in order to fit in with all the rich white people up in New York. Gatz was a fisherman and lost most of his windfall inheritance to lawyers and their lawyerly ways, and we never really learned what he did do to make him so rich. But it's safe to assume from his connections with Mr. Wolfsheim, that he was in fact involved in various illegal activities. A couple weeks pass, and Daisy's been going over to Gatsby's for a while now, and people are beginning to notice. Tom, her husband, isn't in particular very happy about this, and all of this tension culminates when Daisy invites Gatsby to lunch one day with her, Tom, Nick, and Jordan, and everyone decides to go to town. It goes about as well as a road trip with the couple that everyone on the road trip knows are both cheating on each other can go, which is to say, not very well. Tom finally confronts Gatsby, who makes a full 180 and puts the pressure on Daisy to make her say that she never loved Tom. Essentially, he just wants to erase the past 5 years, and, it's pretty ironic that Gatsby says he wants to repeat the past when, all he's been doing is running away from his own. Daisy, understandably, starts crying, and she and Gatsby eventually leave in their little sports car while Nick realizes that it's his birthday. And then Myrtle dies, so. Turns out, driving in the middle of a mental breakdown isn't really a good idea, but yeah, Daisy runs over a woman, and all Gatsby can think about is how to preserve her reputation. Yeah, he's taking all the blame. Also, this is the chapter with probably the most opportunity for character analysis that I will ignore. We here at Nixon Co. do not believe in thoughtful reading. But seriously, go watch the Crash Course video. The next day, Gatsby wants to use the pool before it's drained for the winter, and by this time, we already know something's gonna happen. Mainly because there's like only 20 pages of book left. And happen it does. Myrtle's husband shoots him, and then himself, and oh boy, that's a lot of death for 2 chapters. No one goes to Gatsby's funeral. It's just Nick and Gatsby's dad. Daisy and Tom disappear to who knows where, probably some tropical island, and Gatsby's business friends mostly seem nervous when they learn of his death. But Gatsby's death disillusions Nick's idea of the East, and he visits Gatsby's mansion one last time before his return home, where he makes arguably the most famous quote from the book. So we beat on, boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past. Also, I built God, and he told me to stop playing video games and start studying for finals week, and I don't argue with the words of the Lord, so this is where the video ends. A warning, please don't use any of my horrible similes in an actual essay. If you compare Gatsby's inability to recognize the source of his own happiness to a toddler choking on a chocolate egg, you will not get an A, even though you deserve one. Trust me, I would know.